Some days I am reminded of the importance of taking space for breath right from the get-go. Today's one of those days. I've been struggling with some communication issues with my parents, and I think this is actually part of growing up. I think this is part of adulthood. I think this is part of how we solve our inner child problems, our inner child traumas. And it's a really tough thing to process because our parents are not necessarily ready or willing to volunteer. Yeah, I messed up. I was wrong. I could have done that differently. I could have treated you in a more loving fashion. Parents have a difficult time recognizing they weren't perfect. I have a difficult time recognizing that I'm not perfect. And I personally have experienced as a mother this existential dread that I'm going to get it wrong, that someone's going to judge me, and I'm going to be judged. Okay? That's what I'm afraid of. That's what I'm afraid of. So I've been having some difficult conversations with my mother of late. And being a mother, I now understand where she comes from more intimately. Like I feel it. I feel it more. Because I understand both sides. I understand being the parent. I understand being the child. I currently feel that God has hardened her heart towards certain aspects of life and religion. Now, I know that God does this. God does harden hearts. And I don't think that it's necessarily God coming down and touching a person and saying, "Bop, your heart is hard." What it is God gave humanity free will. All of humanity has free will. The fact of the matter is this universe is not meant to last forever. And so like Murphy's Law, what can go wrong probably will. But we don't have to get stuck in that thinking because we have free will and we recognize there are certain aspects we can control, like our thought patterns, our actions, and our words. We control that. We don't control the outside. So seeking to control outside sources is going to exhaust us. Learning to tune in and tune up our insides is going to give us the space and the strength and the grace that we need to meet people where they're at and to share our light without being overwhelmed by their darkness. So my original question today when I pulled my Archetype card was, why does God harden hearts? The card that I pulled was number 21, and it is called the Mystic. This card really resonated with me because I do feel like a mystic type person. I recognize I have so many dreams and dreams and dreams. I've got the vision. Do I know how to execute it? Not always. In fact, a lot of times I get so overwhelmed with my visions that I end up doing nothing and just holding the vision in space. Like, okay, universe, whenever this is supposed to come into fruition, it will happen. But I recognize I'm not the whole piece today. I'm just part of it. And when it comes to archetypes, all of us have aspects of these archetypes within us, but some are going to be stronger than others. This was one that I relate to strongly. A mystic is a dreamer, a light worker, a seeker of transformation. A mystic is always going to want to step into the situation and say, how can we improve this? How can we evolve? How can we elevate? We're fearlessly dedicated to the path of transformation. I don't fear darkness. One of the frustrations I've had in communicating with my mother this week is that every time something comes up that she doesn't want to talk about, she just disappears. She leaves the conversation. And I'm stuck with this, well, I guess it's just my shit. Because she's choosing not to show up. But as a light worker, I don't fear the darkness. I'm going to continually show up. I am going to continue to show up to this space. Why? Because I do not fear darkness. I transmute darkness. How do I do that? I use the energy that darkness holds, that it carries, and I infuse that with my light. Now I have light energy to reflect back. Now this is key. The person who's receiving that reflection might know what they see, and they may not interpret that as light energy. That is the fact of the matter. A lot of times we don't recognize, or we don't stop to think about how our words or our actions or our inactions affect other people. And when they let us know how we are, or they are affected, we want to have excuses as to how, well, that wasn't our intention. That doesn't foster communication. My mom never let me talk to her like that as a child. And now, the tables have turned. And at first, my ego wants to be like, haha, who's mature now? Who's aligned with God now? Who knows the Bible now? That's awful. That's awful. It's truly terrible. That is not the love I wish to receive from anyone. So why is that what I would project out? Now, sometimes I don't necessarily catch myself before it's out there, right? Because I'm still tuning in, I'm still recognizing, and I'm still learning. And that's where we take personal responsibility, right? Because we're never going to be healed. We're never going to be fixed. We're never going to be finished fucking up till we die. And that's the blessing. What a blessing when God says, honey, you've had enough. You've done so well. Take a rest. Take a break. Let this tableau go. Come rest with me on my bosom and really let go of this physical, imaginary world you've created for that eternal soul. The power of the mystic is to harness dark energy and produce a powerful light. We choose change above anything else. Transformation and growth give us purpose to live. Unanswerable questions give me life. I love to debate with open-minded people. I find that it allows my brain to practice creativity. It allows my heart to feel more confident in choosing and expressing my truths, because I know I've really put some thought into it. And I've even heard differing ideas, and so I've been able to sift and sort, take what serves me and let the rest fall away. It gives me compassion for other people when I open my mind and understand where they might be coming from, because their experience could differ 100% from mine. It allows me to hone my mindfulness skills, because I often need to practice active listening. And a lot of times my mind is so active, I practice active responding. So when I'm listening, I'm already thinking of a response. But that's taking energy and attention away from the person who deserves my whole attention. And so that practice also helps me grow as a human. So these unanswerable questions, these conversations that maybe feel meaningless because we're never going to come to an agreement. We're going to have to maybe continually agree to disagree, but maybe we find that our hearts connect on a soul level because we've been able to speak our truth in a safe space and be heard. It's crazy how many times a human does not actually need to be agreed with or validated. They simply need to be heard. And they need to know that we heard them. Now, with every archetype, there is a light side and a dark side. So on the light side, this mystic is visionary and ageless. I've said a couple times recently that I feel like I'm aging in reverse. I'm turning 33, but when I look at myself or I look at pictures of myself from 3 to 5 years ago, I feel like I look much younger than I did then. That kind of blows my mind, but I truly blame it all on curating curiosity and joy within myself every day. Curating that peace and that patience that I need to just deal with myself before I take myself out into public. And man, I'm a different human. Sometimes I don't even recognize myself in public. When we are dark, and I'm not gonna lie, I've been operating in the dark, especially communicating with my mother, because when she goes dark on me, all of that childhood trauma, those times that I remember my mother disappearing on me when I was a child and I really needed to be seen or heard. And we're not judging my mom for that. Every mom has had to walk away from their kid, okay? It's a fact of life. We're not meant to be able to fully fulfill each other's needs. That's why God exists. These disappointments, they do live in our subconscious. And especially when we are triggered, we may find ourselves reacting because we do not have the space to observe and respond like we may have practiced curating in safe spaces. And the more that we practice responding in safe spaces, the stronger we will be when it comes to actually showing up in that space. But keep in mind, we will still revert to trauma reactions when we feel cornered, and this is a human response. It's not a sin. It's not disrespectful. In fact, we could say it's disrespectful of the person who caused the trigger, especially if they're familiar with the situation and you've been very honest and upfront with them regarding your boundaries and the terms of your agreement to communicate. Learning how to stand up for ourselves with our parents can be so incredibly difficult because, especially as evangelical children, we have been taught to obey, period. You honor your father and mother. You do not argue with your father and mother, period. But guess what, guys? There is another teaching in the Bible that says, leave and cleave. Why do you think that is? Because sometimes our parents followed the Pharisees. Sometimes our parents got stuck in the fundamentals of worship instead of the actual act and practice of following Christ, following in those footsteps, because how are we saved? Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. And no human understands God without understanding the lifestyle that Jesus Christ lived. The lifestyle that Jesus Christ lived was one of yoga, continued union with the Holy Spirit, focusing on first loving God and recognizing that God powered his divinity. And in fact, the breath which nurtured him was the feminine aspect of God. He had to stay connected to the mother, not through an umbilical cord, through the breath. It's a conscious choice. When we're bound in the womb, the baby doesn't have a choice as to whether or not it accepts and absorbs those nutrients. Once we're outside, our nervous system takes over. The breath of life, divinity comes into our bodies, and that divine being, that divine breath, keeps our heart beating. And when we tune into that breath and we interact with that breath and we come to a space of stillness and union with that breath, our mind is able to release, our heart is able to settle, and we're able to communicate freely with the divine, which lives inside of us and holds the entire universe together. To be a mystic, we really have to kind of like awaken this fire inside of us, this tapas. And I really don't like confrontation. I like to run from confrontation. And I've had to really learn to continue to show up for the shit, period. Because guess what? I cannot transmute the darkness if I keep running away from it. And what did Martin Luther King Jr. say? Darkness does not drive out darkness. So if you feel someone is projecting darkness towards you, is running away into your safe space going to promote any type of light healing? Probably not. Probably not. We have to sit in the darkness. We got to show up for it. We have to keep coming back to that space, take a break if we need to, because we recognize that steeping in darkness may cause us to revert And that's not what we're looking for. We want to continue escalating on this evolution to upper echelons of problems. Life is not about getting rid of problems. Healing is not about getting rid of problems. It's about elevating to the next echelon of problems. We trade one set of problems for a different set of problems. And the more we recognize that our problem is always ourself, learning how to tune in and to interact with ourself, everything else just kind of falls into place. One of the things that I have started thinking in my head, when I have this expectation of behavior from another person, specifically when that person has set that expectation of behavior for me. So for example, my parents have set an expectation of behavior that respect means you show up and you finish the conversation, okay? Respect means you show up and you come to some mutual understanding, even if it's not an agreement. But you keep showing up. You don't run away. That's not respectful. But here I am, being required to respect her and not receiving the same in return. Instead, she's continually deflecting on how, well, I'm not coming at her the way she wants to be come at. So I just reflect it right back to her. This is the way you feel I'm coming at you. This is the way I feel you're coming at me. It's funny how similar they are. It'd be great if we could let go. Just recognize each other's feelings, that they're valid. Of course, you have a right to feel that way. I can't take responsibility for your feeling, but I see that you feel it. And I respect that. And you know what? I'm going to support you in a way that I can, that feels safe to my heart. And this idea of perfection in relationship that society has told us that we need to have, maybe we can let go of that and give each other space to be our best authentic selves. And that way, when we have space and time for each other, we can come and communicate in safety, where neither one of us feels the need to raise our hackles. In my experience, communicating with hackles raised is not a blessing for anyone. So then I went on to do a tarot reading because I just really like to make sure that I'm on the right path. I recognize that I am just as culpable in my relationships and communication as anyone else. And if I'm going to have frustrations or feel that people should treat me differently, I probably need to check and make sure that I'm treating them in a way that is fair and loving and kind. So before I drew my tarot cards, I wrote, how is my energy best directed or transmuted when overwhelmed by circumstantial fear and anxiety? Those are unmanageable darkness. That's unmanageable darkness for me. The first card that I pulled was the Page of Water. By the way, every single card that I pulled today was water and air. That is Swords and Cups, I believe. But anyhow, they all have to do with things I can control. Page of Water. Curiosity. Curiosity. This is the time to be curious and to stay curious. And I recognize in my communication with my mother, I made some assumptions based on prior conversations, but I sure did make assumptions, and I could have asked questions. could have been curious. Open-heartedness. This is something I want from my mom. Do I reflect it? Childlike innocence. I open my heart fully, allowing myself to feel childlike wonder and innocence. One of the things that I do in teaching yoga is a lot of times we do practices on our back. That's because we need to take gravity out of the situation. We got to take gravity out of the equation. Do you know how many of us protect our hearts every day in our posture? And we do that because we've been conditioned to do that, not because it's a natural posture for us. Our natural posture is to stick the chest out and to allow our breasts to stay lifted, supported by the rib cage and the diaphragm. This is our natural posture. But a lot of us are here. Why are we here? Gravity. We want to protect our heart. We've been told it's time to grow up and we can no longer have those childish dreams or visions or seek to manifest all of this pleasure in our lives because it's time to grow up. Unfortunately, that also leads the body into dis-ease and depression on a physiological level. So there's that. And so we open that space during yoga and we learn how to bring our chest forward and lengthen our neck. Why? Because we want to access all of that lung power. We sure do. And we want to access all of that turning mechanism in our neck and in our spine. We sure do. This helps us physiologically to feel safe in our environment. Life is a delightful adventure, and I'm here to frolic and play. We have to teach ourselves this. We have to remind ourselves of this because our education and our society and our culture, it's not there. 8 of air. We got 3 more cards. Clarity. Release from denial and seeing things as they are. I bid goodbye to illusions that have clouded my vision, like the illusion that I need my mom to approve of my lifestyle choices. I don't. I'm a full-grown adult. I can make my own choices now. It's true. Honesty gives me strength and courage to face whatever I have to face. And this is so true. I know myself best. I know where my heart is. I know where my head is. And I know that I'm aligned. And so regardless of whether or not my mom thinks I'm unhinged, it's really on her. It's not on me. She doesn't have evidence. Ten of water. Serenity, peace, good fortune, well-being. And you know what? When I practice these tenets, curiosity over judgment, when I allow myself to see things as they truly are and I release the need to change them or fix other people, I experience serenity, peace, and good fortune. And the reason why I know I experience that is because I always am on time places, even when I generally can tend to be a little bit late. I end up being prepared for any situation that arises, even if I didn't anticipate that situation. And that begins with protecting and refreshing our mind and our body connection. If our nervous system feels safe, our mind can stay open. If we say an automatic no, if we have an automatic no, that's a really good opportunity to practice curiosity. Why do I automatically reject that? the fact of the matter is that I do know myself full well. And therefore, the opinions of other people should not bother me. Do they sometimes? Absolutely. But I'm working on it. Last card. Oh, wait, no, this is not the last card. Second to last card. 8 of Water. Journey of discovery. Letting go and seeking deeper meaning. Greater authenticity beyond superficiality. So if I look at my life and the way that I'm going, I started out superficiality, getting the things is going to bring me the peace and the joy and the happiness that I want. Burnout. Okay, that was not the move. So I shifted. I turned into learning. I let go of the Joneses, of looking some type of way, of fitting in with some type of society. And I spent a long time in the desert. No makeup, crazy hair, don't give a shit what you think or say about me. I'm living my best life in my sweatpants or in my underwear, not caring. Why did I do that? Because I had to let go of the superficiality of all of those things. It's not that those things are bad or wrong. When they're the focus, when we think those things are going to bring us what we want, we can't enjoy them properly. So I had to bring all of those things, that peace, that joy, that patience, that kindness, that love, I had to bring it to myself first. And now when I apply makeup or when I get in my fancy truck, people are like, who is that bitch? I'm the same bitch. I just don't need any of this. I don't need it. Sure does look good though. Releasing shame, fear, and guilt, observing what resonates with me and increasing my focus there. Recognizing fear, shame, and guilt create illusions which keep me trapped. So then I get to make conscious choices. How dope is that? The last card is Messenger of Air. I pull this card a lot. I think this card is actually maybe like written for me. As you think, so shall you be. This is, and you know, my mind has been caught up in anxieties and projecting other people's projections onto me my entire life. I get really caught up in there. And I've been anxious and so concerned about pleasing others my entire life. I've shifted that thinking. I've shifted that thinking to what brings me peace and joy and pleasure. How can I bring myself that first and then show up to society? And that's been everything. In the Good Tarot, air relates to swords, which is conflict, tension, chaos, destructive energy, and all of that typically in the air and swords suite. It has to do with our mind and our thoughts and our attitudes and our subconscious. So a lot of this stuff is maybe chaos and destruction that we don't understand. Maybe we are the ones performing it or we're receiving it, but because it's the subconscious and it's things that we don't necessarily interact with, a lot of times we think that our thoughts are placed there by other people, and that's because we haven't placed thoughts in our mind purposely, intentionally first. So these opinions can be informed by experience or adherence to dogma, allegiance to a way of thinking or acting, like a religious circle, a cult perhaps, a learned response, subconscious programming, and swift reactions, maybe not having this space for a response. Now, I did slip into this space this week in communicating with my mom 1 or 2 times. I'm not going to lie. So these are 4 things that I'm using to keep myself balanced. 1, I need to broaden my perspective. Remember, curiosity. Ask questions. Don't make statements. 2, I am reacting to situations in my past. I need to decide if I want to repeat those reactions and probably receive the same result, or shift into a more comfortable response that resonates with me. Number 3, I can and am adapting to a new way of thinking. Number 4, if I am swift and move quickly, ensuring my actions are for the highest good. Positive outcomes are assured. And, I would just want to say with this, like, swift and move quickly, this is after prayer and meditation. After we've settled on a response versus a reaction. We can bring our responses swiftly and quickly. That's a blessing. But moving swiftly and quickly without taking a pause to observe and decide beforehand, no matter how woke we are or how elderly we are, we're just giving ourselves an opportunity to faceplant. Gotta go.